What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Stella Herself podcast. New episodes every Thursday, so don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, join memberships for early access to podcasts, follow on Apple Music. I don't know if you can follow on Spotify. And of course, don't forget to share a screenshot or an aesthetic picture or boomerang of you listening on your TV, in your car, on your hot girl walk, etc. I love to see where you guys are when you're listening, and even if you just reposted, that means so much to me. Thank you guys so much, especially for the support and love on last week's episode. I had my first real guest, because all the guests I've had in the past have been friends. I had a therapist on and I asked her some questions, so if you guys haven't listened to that, I would definitely recommend that you do. She had a lot of good insight on just so many things that I talk about and that we discuss, you and I discuss on this podcast all the time. So it was just very validating to just know that, a lot of what I talk about is legit. But then also just for me as an individual, this is something I've loved to do for so long, even before I ever had an actual podcast. I just loved talking. No, but I've told you guys before, I had a radio, quote unquote radio show. I would record radio shows on this little tape cassette player when I was 10 years old, 9, 10. It was just a really cool experience for me to feel like I was a peer to somebody who obviously has so much more experience than me, who is older than me. So to just feel that respect from her and to just have such a good time. Oh, my voice. That might happen today, y'all. It was just really cool. And I was nervous about it. I wasn't super nervous. I wouldn't say I had anxiety about it. I was mostly just nervous about everything going well technologically, because it was my first also virtual guest, the first time I'd had anyone ever call in. And I just wasn't really sure exactly how I was going to do that. I do wish her audio was a little better, because I did in fact forget to tell her to record it from her phone or something on her end. So all of that was just recorded through my mic, and I didn't even realize till after we finished, and I was like, oh my god, I was wearing headphones. What if it didn't actually capture any of what she was saying? Thank god it did. Thank god. So at least I was just at fucking least I tried to audio correct it as much as I could, but bitch, at the end of the day, I'm not an audio engineer. I'm just a quaint girl. So not that quaint girls can't be audio engineers, but you know what I mean. I'm just not one. So anyway, I just really appreciated all the support on that. And even beforehand, when I was talking about, on my story, how I was kind of nervous, just so many of you reached out and said, basically wished me well, said that it was going to be great and that you believed in me, and that just meant a lot to me. So thank you guys so much for your support. I definitely want to have more guests on soon, because, once you do one, it's you just know you can do it. But yeah, that was last week's episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, go ahead and do that. Beverage of the day, check. Everyone comment down below your beverage. I'm having a grande cold brew with 1 pump of cinnamon dolce syrup, one pump of pumpkin sauce, and a splash of oat milk. It's so good. It's just lightly sweet. The pumpkin cream cold brew is just a little, I get it without the extra vanilla syrup, so I just get it with light pumpkin cold foam, but it's still just sometimes a little too much. So this is a good way to get that pumpkin infusion in the whole coffee, and it's just not overly sweet. So if you want to try it. And bitch, it is hitting. I was so tired earlier and just ew, this is such a waste of a day, SMH. And that just really did what it had to do. I love that. I love when the caffeine just hits. I know I've probably said that a million times, especially on this podcast, but it's just it feels so good. So we're doing the podcast a little later in the day than I normally do, but I'm glad, because if I had done it earlier, it just would have been I would have been tired and not a good time. I'm so excited because I finally got a new book from the library. It had just been a while since I read, and I don't know why. I definitely want to end the year strong, because if you guys remember, at the beginning of this year, one of my resolutions, I don't even really remember what my resolutions were. I know I wrote them down, so I have to check. It's getting to be that time of year, y'all. It is that time of year where we need to check in and I don't know, there's still time, to accomplish goals, or at least start goals, so we're on the right track in January. So definitely check in with yourself, even if you never made resolutions or anything. Just ask yourself, what do I want to, where do I want to be at this time next year, or where do I want to be at the beginning of this upcoming summer, because this is just such a good time to plan, especially with Mercury retrograde. We're going to talk more about that today. My mom sent me this like in-depth article about this specific Mercury retrograde, so I'm excited to go over that. One of my goals this year was to read more books, so I finally got my ass back on Goodreads and have been tracking. I did their little yearly book challenge thing where you can set how many books you want to read. I just did 12. I was like, okay, like I have not been reading that much, but you know what really helped, and I know I've told y'all this, so some of you already know, but getting a library card helped so much, because that might be like duh for some of you. For some of you, maybe not though. I don't know. Like I grew up going to the library all throughout my childhood, middle school, high school. I was always in the library. I was such a reader. As a kid, I was always in the advanced reading group. Like, I mean, you can probably tell, like, honestly. But like I would read for fun. Like that was my entertainment. I was thinking about this last night. Why was I reading Sylvia Plath in 8th grade? I don't think that's like normal. Like, why did I read The Bell Jar in 8th grade? Like, I was like 12. And I was like, yeah, this is good. But yeah, I think just moving to a big city and I guess just becoming an adult, like, I definitely read, but it just was never the same. And then it was always like, oh, I have to buy the book to read it. Like, I don't know why I'd never got a library card, but it was just like, oh, it's like, I don't know. I think part of me was like scared to go. I had like anxiety about it. And I was like, oh my God. But then I was like, bitch, I want to read more. So I got a library card and now I go to the library, and I've never heard of anyone going to the library. So just kidding. But like, since when do the LA influencer girlies go to the LA public library? Let's start a new trend. They really have so many resources there and a lot of books, and you can put the books on hold so you don't have to talk to anybody except for when you go to check them out. Somebody did message me and say I inspired them to get a library card, so I'm so proud. My mom would be so happy to hear that. And just like, oh my God, this is so useful. I can read all these books for free. I don't have to buy them. And like, I mean, some books are worth buying and owning, but it's like a lot of books, especially if you don't know the vibe of a book yet, you know, you're just gonna read it once and it's just gonna sit around. And unless you like have a library in your house or like whatever, it's like, bitch, we live in small apartments. We're gonna move soon, probably, most of us, you know, this, like if you live in a small apartment, that's probably not where you're gonna live for the rest of your life. So it's just, it can be kind of annoying. It's like, if these books don't even mean that much to me, like I'm just lugging them around. Like right now I have all these, I mean, a lot of the books I own, I do, like, I'm glad I own them. But bitch, some of them, it's like, I shouldn't have bought this. Like, now what am I going to do with it? Like, you can't really resell a book, like, for that much, you know? Get a library card because you can read so much more. I am already, like, double over my book goals of the year. I don't know what book I'm on, but definitely did more than one book a month this year. So, period. Current book, after all that, current book is Communion by Bell Hooks. If y'all remember, one of the first books I read this year was All About Love by Bell Hooks, and it was around Valentine's Day as well. I feel like a lot of people were reading it on social media. That was a really good book. So I wanted to read this because I saw somebody talking about it on TikTok, and I was like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to like read another one of her books. Oh, I've been meaning to read another book in general. This book, I'm only on the 5th chapter. It's already so just validating and relevant, I feel, to so many of the things that I talk about on here, and that and just as women that we go through and experience, trending topics on social media, you know, those annoying podcasts. Maybe you're annoyed by my podcast sometimes, that's fine, but like, you know, the specific vibe of like the annoying podcasts, like, because it's not even just like the bro podcast, it's like when the girls get on and start like saying the same bullshit as the bros. That's like ding, ding, ding. It's just, it hits everything, and it's so easy to read and just digestible. There's like a reason why, you know, she is such a renowned author, you know. So this book is Communion, the Female Search for Love. So it starts out by talking about how when we're born as girls into this world, we're, you know, taught from a young age that womanness and femaleness isn't enough, and that it's kind of to be looked down upon, and we're always kind of like striving to attain that love, especially from men and men in our life, because of patriarchy, you know, because in patriarchy we are taught that a man's opinion is like the most important and the most valuable, and like, oh, like if only I had that, like that approval, that love, like then I'll be complete. And then she talks about her own experience growing up and how she grew up in a very traditional patriarchal household where, you know, her dad was the head of the house and she wanted to go away to college, and he was like, no, you're not going to leave Kentucky to go to California. And she was like, I'm going to go. This quote really stood out to me. There's like a few that I want to read to you guys. But this says, men who oppressed women did not do so because they acted simply from the space of free will. They were in their own ways agents of a system they had not put into place. Yet our compassion for patriarchy's abuse of men was not as intense as our passion for female agency and our will to gain social equality with men. So that's so true, because, you know, all this talk, especially recently with all these male podcasters and just these very extreme, like, I don't know, misogynists, basically, you know, all this talk of like the alpha male and like, oh, what does it mean to be an alpha male? It's like everything they basically say is just exactly the patriarchal definition of like what it means to be a man, a strong man, like a powerful man. And so you're just kind of going along with society. Like you're like, they're all for like, oh, like don't be a sheep, like I'm a lion in a sheep's world, whatever the fuck they say. But they're literally doing like exactly what society teaches them. Like society teaches men, like this patriarchal society teaches men like to not show emotion, to not be, because it makes you, you know, weak, assert power over women, and to be big and strong and this and that, whatever. It's like, that's just patriarchy. Like if you truly, I feel like were a strong man, like you would be able to be vulnerable, you'd be able to be in touch with your emotions, like you would be able to just allow yourself to fully be yourself and not like as a full person, human being, and not like this super extreme harmful idea of like what patriarchy has a man to be. Because yeah, patriarchy is harmful for men too. It's more harmful for women. A lot of men, not that this is like an episode about men, but just to finish this point, I just retweeted a tweet this man tweeted. Where is it? I think he deleted it. But it was something along the lines of like, I'm so sick of seeing all these men repost that like, oh, as a man, you just have to suffer in silence. Like when there's so many resources available. And I think I've talked about that too. Like I remember when there was this specific post circulating around the bros IG stories, like, nobody cares about us and how we feel and like blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, valid, but like the tone of the post was very much like kind of blaming women subtly. Like, oh, you don't care about us. And it's like, babe, it's not like the fact, it's not like women don't care about you or how you feel. I mean, maybe some women in your life generally don't, but like, that's like patriarchy. It's like you're so, like I literally remember talking about this like when it happened. You're so close to connecting the dots. Like you're almost there. Because yeah, you feel frustrated. You feel like you can't open up to anybody. You can't, you know, be your full complete self. Like maybe, you know, you had men in your life when you were younger tell you not to cry, stop being a bitch. Like, you know, not even men, like just anyone. Like a lot of men just grow up like that. And it's like not safe to express. They feel it's not safe to express how they're feeling. They are so out of touch with their like emotional body. So anyway, that takes a lot more strength. Like moving towards that takes a lot more strength than like being this extreme, like I'm such a masculine alpha man. You know, like that's just, you're going by the playbook. Like you're just doing what society and history has like taught you. Like it's not very fun and fresh. Just my thoughts on that. Let me know your thoughts. Another paragraph I found to be super relevant, just especially with all this talk about celibacy and a lot of women choosing to be celibate. I don't know. Like I wonder what the actual statistics on that are, because it's like, yeah, I feel like we see a lot of, I mean, if your For You page is like tailored to that, we see a lot of women talking about celibacy, but I wonder what the actual like nationwide numbers are, like if it's actually a trend or if it's just like our bubble that we're in. wait. Men, so I think this is in like the 60s. So she's talking when she like went to college, 60s, 70s. So she says, men celebrated our sexual liberation, but ultimately many males revolted when we stated that our bodies were territories they could not occupy at will. Men were ready for female sexual liberation if it meant free, no strings attached, but were rarely ready for feminist female sexual agency. This agency gave us the right to say yes to sex, but it also empowered us to say no. I think that's low-key like the difference of like remember the early Call Her Daddy days where they were just like that whole idea of like, oh my god, like it's just so empowering to like have casual sex. It's like that's part of it, but then it's also like the power to say no. And I mean, that's not a whole different conversation, but kind of a different conversation. She says, I remember the look of sheer disbelief on my partner's face when I told him that he needed to understand that if I did not want to have sex for months, that was my choice, and it should be clear that I was not responsible for meeting his sexual needs. Even though he thought I had lost my mind, he agreed in principle that I was right. While it became more acceptable for women to say no now and then, it was not acceptable to say no for any significant amount of time. An individual woman in a primary relationship with a man could not say no because she feared there was always another woman in the background who could take her place, a woman who would never say no. Bro, like the fact that was back then, I mean, not that it's like so long ago, but you know, just the fact that we are still having these conversations now. Like I know you've seen, maybe not, did you see those podcast clips of like those women, or maybe it was like one woman being like, yeah, like you need to be there to satisfy your man's every desire or he's gonna cheat on you and leave you. And it's just all about the man and the man's like needs and like not about you at all. And you know what's so funny is like, love a good Real Housewives of New Jersey. And so I was like, oh my god, like Melissa Gorga, who's one of the housewives, wrote this book about how she keeps her marriage like so hot and sexy, and like, oh my god, how she just remains like hot and how they just remain like whatever. So I was reading reviews for it on Amazon, and it was literally exactly that. Like it had a lot of good reviews because people are fans of her, but it also had a lot of bad reviews. Like one of the main words, like, you know, when you go to Amazon reviews and there's like the standout like words that people use a lot, one of the, like, I think it was literally the first word was marital R word. And people were saying like, yeah, basically the whole premise of the book is like, just you have to give it up for your husband whenever he wants it, and then he'll do like what you say and he'll stay around because you're satisfying him, versus if you don't, then he's gonna like lose interest, he's like whatever. So like bro, this is marriage, like I don't want it. Something else that stood out to me about this book was the next chapter about work and love. It's also relevant because, you know, I know you bitches love to retweet, not everyone specifically, but I know bitches love to retweet the like, oh my god, like why did we decide women should work? And I know people are joking, but this is why. My sister, like many women, felt isolated and trapped by domesticity. As the children were growing up and leaving home, she was the one who had no world outside the home. Naturally, she found this depressing. She also feared she was setting a bad example for her daughters. So I think she went back to school and started working. So this also meant that she no longer was present to cook and clean for everyone and to service their every need. And initially they were quite pissed off. While she persevered, it caused her considerable emotional anguish. Not only did she face emotionally alienating her family, but also she feared harming her family. Even though in time they all adjusted and found their family life enhanced by the presence of a working mom who was not always angry and depressed, for a long time they were not supportive. While women agreed that work outside the home could be as much drudgery as work inside the home, almost everyone acknowledged that having a job gave a measure of independence and autonomy. What the fuck? Increased self-esteem and the possibility of new interests. However, bitch, only women who made large incomes were truly liberated by work. These were the women who did not have to work the second shift when they returned home, so they could hire caregivers. a cook, a housekeeper, a nanny, and so on. Partnered women who made smaller incomes found that it was the man in the house who benefited most from these changes. He had less economic pressure and less responsibility. Often, women felt so guilty about working outside the home that they worked even harder to create the perfect home. Also, working outside the home did not mean that women were no longer financially dependent on men. In many cases, men who previously contributed income to the household held on to their money, and women's wages were spent for the household, thus eliminating the possibility that her newly gained economic clout would transfer into actual freedom and power to demand equality or escape male domination. Single working women benefited the most from increased opportunities for women in the workforce. Newly working women with husbands and or families often felt that life had become harder and more difficult. To them, it felt as though a feminist insistence on work as the road to freedom had been a betrayal. Prior to the large-scale entry of women into the workforce, men often claimed that working hard took too much energy, that they were drained and could not be expected to give emotionally when they came home. Now, women were working, most often doing a second shift, like household chores and whatnot, and we were still expected to give love. Balancing work and love, doing a fine job at both, many women began to expect more from men emotionally. When it came to the realm of heterosexual romance, we wanted to give and receive love rooted in sharing and mutuality. At the end of the day, it was infinitely easier for men to make way for women in the workforce, to do some, if not an equal portion of the work at home, even to take on a more primary parenting role than it was for them to give emotionally. So I'm super excited to continue reading this book, but as you can see, it's just super relevant and I feel like provides like history. I'm just so excited to be reading this, and I feel like this is definitely a book that I'm going to purchase. But yeah, I hope she has some answers because it's just kind of like depressing, you know, like, and especially just kind of taking some time off from dating and like really talking to anyone. It's like you do realize, first of all, how like fucked up past situations were, and then also just like how, I don't know, how less stressful it is when you're not around men. But honestly, like, it's like I want to say that, but it's honestly just brought up a lot of like anger in me, because it's just hard to, bro, it's just hard to be around men, like, period. And this is kind of like shifting subjects, but I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Baddies, stand up. There's this certain vibe. Fuck, I just saw a TikTok about it too, but I've like seen it talked about before, and bitch, I've experienced it. But like there's just this certain vibe of like when you're a pretty girl, when you're hot, people, men especially, only really see you as that. And I mean just in general, you know, men, a lot of heterosexual men see women just as objects or just as whatever role they kind of assign them to be. We're rarely seen as full people to begin with. Even if like you're somebody's mother, wife, girlfriend, whatever, it's like you're normally seen as that. I feel like especially for wives and mothers, you know, especially just traditionally, historically speaking. And, you know, like this book says, that's why it can be hard for a lot of women, you know, when their children grow up and then, you know, they're like, wow, who am I? Because I've just had this role for so long. And it's like, no, I need to find myself again. And I feel like probably some of that is just normal, like life changes and stuff. Like, oh, now I just have more time for myself. But also it's kind of that societal like shift. Like you are only a mother. You are only a wife. Like you must have no other life or personality or hobbies outside of that, or else you're selfish and you're not giving enough to your family or your husband or whatever. If you're hot, guys will want to talk to you for like the status of it, and like I heard somebody put it as like the experience of it. Like we're already objectified, but then especially when you're hot, like guys will want to talk to you just because you're hot, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, I can have this like trophy, or like I can check this experience off my list of like being with this hot girl or this type of hot girl or even just this type of girl, whatever. And like I don't say this in like a, I don't know, like I'm just like so hot, like pretty privilege is so hard type of way. But I've definitely found that I think especially being in LA maybe, and just being on social media and having somewhat of a following. And I feel like in the past, I've definitely kind of, I mean, if you just look at me, like I do have a specific look. And I feel like just in the past, my Instagram was a little more targeted towards the male gaze and a little more like looks focused. Whereas now I feel like I realize that. And just as I've done more TikTok and stuff, and just that realization, I don't really want men on my page. So I'm going to make my Instagram just aesthetic, more just outfits and like, I don't know, just less male gaze, more my personality, more funny shit from my TikTok. And like, I'm not just going to worry about like, oh, being an IG baddie in every photo, you know? So that's like a change that I consciously made because I'm like, I don't want men on my page. Like, they're ruining the vibes. Ew, I do not want them here. No, but literally recently, like every time a random man follows me, I like remove them as a follower. Or like I'll go through who watched my story, and if it's like a random man, I'll remove them. Or like, especially random foreign men, you know, the ones that like DM you the creepiest shit, I will block them immediately. And bro, also in doing this, I've noticed just the amount of like the sex bots watching my story and just how much it fluctuates. It's like, is that people creeping on you for real? Because I had like so many the other day and I was like, bro, ew, blocked all. I really feel like at this point in my life, if I was not doing social media as like a career and like I didn't have y'all, like if I was just like a random, I would like not, I don't even know if I would like use IG because I don't really like people in my business. So if I wasn't like posting, like, because I'm like, oh, I want to keep y'all updated, you know, I want to like post my podcast, I want to like get the tea on like, what are your guys' thoughts on this or that? Like, it's like, I don't think I'd just be like posting my life just like for fun. Like, it's just like, ew, I don't, sometimes when, especially people I know watch my story, it like weirds me out. And it's like, even if it's like, it's not weird, it's not like tea, it's not like, oh, I think this person's like watching me for a reason. It's just like kind of like, ew, just the realization like people are watching this. I don't know. But yeah, like just that vibe of like, oh, they just kind of categorize me as like, oh, she's like an IG girl, so like I want to talk to her because of that, because I like grew up following IG girls and now maybe I'll get to be with one. Like I feel like I've experienced that before from guys. And like not all the time, whatever, like, and like I said, like it's not like I'm trying to like be like, it's just so hard to be conventionally, like have some conventionally attractive features. But you know what I mean. And again, in general, men just want to like categorize us often. So I'm just like very grateful to have the mindset and the tools that I do have and to just learn what I've learned, because I can smell bullshit from a mile away. And I feel like I've seen it all, heard it all. As far as just like bullshit goes, you know? So like I will sense the bullshit. One of my favorites, this hasn't happened recently, probably because I've just like posted my personality more. But like, you know, when guys are like, oh my God, like I just didn't expect you to be so funny. Like I didn't expect you to like this was so long ago, bro, but like I just remember like using a meme and like a guy was like so like taken aback by that, or like he acted like that, like, and it was even then, bro, like I knew, oh my God, you're not like other girls, like you actually have a personality, you're actually so different, I just love talking to you because you're just like not like other girls, like these girls are just so stuck up. And then I was thinking, like, I probably give off a stuck up vibe, like, in public, like, just in general, like, especially the gym. And I'm trying to remember if anyone ever, like, told me that. Like, I'm not sure. Like, people have probably said it behind my back. I don't think anyone's ever said that to my face. Because if you talk to me, unless you're, like, literally a random man who's pissing me off, like, I'm very nice. I actually have heard that once from my Instagram though, like it was like a friend of a friend, and they were like, oh yeah, like before I met you, like I thought you were gonna be like just more like stuck up and mean because like you don't smile in your photos. And I was like, well, now you know. It's just like very odd, and you just have to really not care what people think about you. And it's like when you're real and you know the vibes. Like when you follow the therapy pages and you know, like, okay, I am being direct. I am being myself, true. I'm standing in my truth. I'm standing on what I say. I'm doing what I say I'm gonna do. I'm being direct. I'm being direct with people. I don't care what you think about me, because there's none of that room for like, oh, like I'm unsure, like I don't know what I feel, I don't know what I think, so like, oh my god, what if they know what I think, what if they know how I feel and who I am? It's like, when you know who you are, or at least just like what your values are, what you stand for, it's like, I don't care, because you're either gonna get it or you're not. And I feel like I'm truly at a place now, not that I would say I was ever at a place where I like would say, oh my god, I drastically didn't know who I was, or I drastically like was so like, oh my god, worrying about what other people thought of me or were saying about me. But I just feel so strongly now that I don't care, literally. Like, I actually feel that, and it's kind of like nice, 'cause it's like, you either get it or you don't. And I feel like a lot of it is just like, what's helped me is just being less afraid, practicing saying no, and practicing, you know, standing up for myself, listening to my anger. Like, if someone angers me, speaking up about it. And then it's like, you just get better at that. And then it's like, bro, if you do something to piss me off, why would I care what you think? Or like, if you're a lame in the sense of like, oh, you're like, say I value honesty, and if you're someone who has shown to me that you do not value honesty in whatever way, it's like, why would I like place any importance over or on your opinion of me? So I don't know, we're like talking about a lot of different things here, but just like some thoughts. So yeah, I think that just takes time and growing into yourself. But yeah, I hope this book has some answers, man, because I just feel like, bro, I really just feel like I'm gonna be like alone, because like, ew, these guys just don't get it. So until we have some kind of societal shift, it's like, I don't really see this happening. How can I be gay? My bitch is homophobic. Mercury retrograde in Libra and Virgo. As Mercury retraces the zodiac terrain from 24 degrees of Virgo to 9 degrees of Libra, personal material in need of deeper engagement will become excavated, bringing opportunities for insight that can catalyze significant growth and foster breaking out of stuck patterns. As part of the process, however, we may need to return to long-standing issues in need of release, reworking, or reintegration. After passing through a phase of purification that will be especially intense leading up to Mercury's union with the Sun on the September 22nd equinox, we may experience renewal on the other side. This retrograde journey will mine the underbelly of idealistic dreams to aid us in examining how to build a more solid foundation underneath for visions for creative expression and the growth that have been developing. By questioning our beliefs and being willing to consider where we are misleading ourselves with illusions, so the full moon in Pisces, if you couldn't get that enough. By the end of Mercury's retrograde, we will be able to realize what aspects of our future visions are too idealistic and lack grounding in practical potential. The awareness that we can access through Mercury retrograde can help us transcend rigid parameters of duality by swinging wildly at times between extremes of perception in a continual process of oppositions. It's necessary to embrace being in between states and forms during periods of Mercury retrograde. And while it will be possible to bring matters into definite form, in some situations we will need to accept the flux of formlessness and fluidity, recalibrating our perceptions and decisions in accordance with changing conditions. Mercury retrograde periods can be excellent for in-depth research in general, but during the initial phase of Mercury's retrograde passage, we can get especially powerful results when breaking free from stuck patterns and old habits, as well as when releasing ourselves from aspects of our past that need to be burned off. The closer Mercury gets to his conjunction with the Sun on September 22nd, the greater his capacity will be for the purification and purgation, I hope I'm saying that right, y'all, of the past. We will also become aware of new opportunities for growth that can emerge from the composting of past dynamics. Even though periods of Mercury retrograde are characterized in popular astrology as signifying communication mishaps and breakdowns, The intensified presence of Mercury during its retrograde in actuality can lead to breakthrough conversations when both people are committed to engaging and working through whatever trouble is present within relational dynamics. So I will link this article down below because there's like a lot on here. Like if you're into more, just like a little more real astrology, less fluff. No, it's definitely not like just like a fun and fresh fluff though. Like it's very like, if you want to know the exact transits on each day and how they're going to affect you and like a bunch of stuff. Like, not that it's super like, oh my god, this is like crazy, so advanced, but it's just like very much in depth. So if you're interested, I will link it down below. Shout out to my mom for providing us with this. But basically this Mercury retrograde is going to be just like so same. I bet you didn't think that was gonna come out of my mouth. This coffee is so good, y'all. Like, he put his whole Starbussy into this. I don't know why it's like sorry, I apologize on behalf of that. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk about was this TikTok I saw this morning. I woke up at 5 a.m. today, like, for no reason, like, and I was so tired. It was just like, ew. Anyway, so basically this girl, and this is not like critique of her at all, but I just wanted to talk about the situation. So basically this girl made this TikTok where she was like, oh, like my homie friend asked me to hang out, and like I low-key have a feeling that he thinks it's like a hangout, so I'm gonna dress like a bro and I'm gonna wear my dad's cologne and like we're just gonna see what happens. So I think they're just like talking in his car for a long time or something, and then she's like, oh, I have to pee, and mind you, this is like late at night, but apparently he had asked to hang out earlier, but she didn't know what she was doing, so she waited till she had no plans. So they were hanging out at like 11 p.m. at night. Red flag. But then she was like, oh, I have to pee. So he was like, oh, do you want to pee inside? And she was like, yeah. And then she was like, oh, red flag. And then so he's like, oh, like let me just make the lighting nice. And she's like, oh my god, he's gonna turn on the red lights. And then she's like, okay, I'm gonna leave in like 20 minutes. And then he tries to so she tells him, I'm about to leave in 20 minutes, and he puts a movie on. So then she like, luckily, I was like, oh my god, please let this end good. So luckily she was just like, I'm actually gonna leave now, and she left. And then apparently he was texting her like, or like said something before she left, like, oh, but I think while they were in his room, like he started like talking like, oh my god, like, you know, I just liked you for so long, like blah blah blah. So just like a few thoughts. I guess number one, most obvious, listen to your intuition. If you get a feeling like, oh, I think this is what this is about to be, like, I honestly just wouldn't even put myself in that position. And that's not like, I do not say that in like a victim blamey way, but it's just like, if there's one thing I wish I could have like learned, I guess, when it comes to like dealing with men and just life in general, bro, like if I have some kind of like inkling beforehand, it's like I wish I just didn't give in to my curiosity, or like, oh, well, let's just see how it goes, because you're usually 100% right. So that's not to say if something bad happens to you that I'm like, well, maybe you should have, like, no, but like just as advice to myself, like it's just like, bitch, I wish I didn't go. Like, I really wish I just, like, if you have an inkling, you're usually right, so just keep that in mind. Also, something that kind of came to mind as she was saying, oh, I'm gonna leave in 20 minutes. I feel like I learned this year, emphasis. If you start thinking that means you want to leave. So just leave. Because I feel like it's almost, and again, this is not like about the girl at all. Like, I'm just using it as an example because I just feel like I related to it a lot. I feel like I have kind of realized this year that that's like a people-pleasing like reaction almost, or what's the word, like it's people-pleasing. Because if you are like, oh, this is uncomfortable, I'm gonna leave in 20 minutes, why wait at all? Because like you'll feel less rude if you give them, like, they want to hang out with you, so you'll feel less rude if you like, okay, well, I'll give them 20 minutes. Like, no, unless it's like your best friend is crying to you about a guy or something where it's like not that serious. okay, like I'll be there for you as a friend, but I'm gonna put a limit on this. Or, oh, someone needs to vent to me, but I'm gonna be there for them, but I'm gonna set a boundary with a time limit. Like, unless it's something like that, especially if you're with like a man, bitch, and you start getting those thoughts of like, I'm gonna leave soon. Leave then and there. Just, you don't even need a reason, bitch. Like, just the fact that you are thinking that alone. And I think I was talking about this like recently, but it's just like, bro, if you, like, things don't have to be going dramatically bad and wrong, or you don't have to be in a dramatically unsafe, horrible situation to just leave. Like, if you're not having a good time, you can just leave. And if you're like, well, it's not a good time, but it's not a bad time. When you're with your best friend, are you thinking things like, I'm just going to leave in 20 minutes? Like, most of the time, probably not. You're probably not even, like, thinking usually of the time because you're just enjoying your time. Like, if it is truly you're having a good time and this is a good place for you to be, this is a good, yes, I should be spending my life here at this moment with this person. Like, you're not, like, having this kind of like, oh, I should probably leave in 20 minutes. Or like, oh, how am I going to get out of here? Or like, oh, like, fuck, getting a bad feeling. So that alone, just as soon as you start thinking that, it's like, I should probably just go. Don't people please. Don't, I'll give him 20 minutes. No, you leave that. Sorry, something came up. I gotta go. Or sorry, I have to go. I'm really tired. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna press my Uber. Actually, I mean, depends. Sometimes it's like nice to just request your Uber and then say you're going, because then you have the excuse of like, oh, I'm at the door. Otherwise, then you have to like wait, unless you want them to request your Uber if you're with a guy. But sometimes the best thing is just to get the fuck out of there. Don't rely on a guy for that, because that could also put you in a bad situation. Because like, what if he doesn't request your Uber, or he's like, oh, I'll request it in 20 minutes. And then 20 minutes turns into an hour turns into all night. If you had just requested your own, you could have been out of here, Also, just like PSA to guys, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's like your friend, quote unquote, I just would not have that conversation in that situation. Because if you get rejected, what's your plan? The bitch is at your house on, like, sitting on your bed, in your room, whatever the case may be, in like a like, oh, we're about to hook up way. At least maybe he thinks that. Oh my God. But it's just like, do some guys not like read the room? Dude, one time, oh my God. So one time, this is just like what's reminding me of. My friend and I were hanging out with these two guys. The guys didn't know each other. So we were originally with one guy who was like our mutual friend. And then we went to go pick up like my dude. It was like a really, like, it was odd. Like, it was like kind of someone I was talking to, but we had never really hung out. But I was like, oh guys, like, let's go pick him up. So we went to pick him up. And then I think we were going into the grocery store or something. So me and my dude, we're like sitting in the backseat together. We go in, and then my friend tells me that the other dude outside is like confessing his love of me to my friend, as I'm like with this other guy in front of his face. And it's like, bro, I thought we were homies. Now, and like, at least he didn't do it in front of me, or in front of my dude. But like, and like, this was never my dude, by the way. That was the only time we like ever hung out at. Like, it was weird. He was just like weird. But like, time and a place. Come on. Like, and why are you telling my best friend that? Like, it was just so, bro, timing, please. And like, I get it, if you really like someone, maybe you're nervous around them or something, like, you're not always thinking rationally, but that's why it's good to just make a plan beforehand of what you will and will not say. Just like, why would he do that? Like, it was so stupid. But yeah, so that was just kind of like my little inkling, my little like learning lesson from that girl's TikTok. Just as soon as you think, yeah, I should probably leave in 20 minutes. Nope, leave now. Are you people pleasing? Do you feel bad that you're cutting it short? Too bad, because at the end of the day, 20 minutes is not gonna make or break. It's really not in that situation. So like, if you want to get the fuck, get the fuck. Bro, there's just so many things. There's so many like traumas that could have been avoided if I had like just left. If I had just left as soon as I felt like, oh, this is like awkward, this is weird, this is unsafe. And again, like, things do not have to get to the point of like drastically uncomfortable or unsafe or horrible for you to just like leave. Like, you can just leave. If anything, text your friend, say, call me with a quote unquote emergency, or even just make something up. Look at your phone. Oh, my friend needs me. I gotta go. Like, bro, at the end of the day, it's like, just get the fuck. So, and it's people pleasing. Like, that was my realization of the day. Like, oh my God, when I do that, because I've done that so many times, I'm people pleasing. Oh my God. So yeah, it's just like, you know, we can just be aware of it. And now the next time we think, well, I'll just leave in 20 minutes. No, if I want to leave, I'm doing it now. Anyway, so that's all I'm going to talk about today. But thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I will link my Goodreads down below. I will link the article down below. I will link the book down below. I will link the TikTok down below. So make sure you comment down below. Rate the podcast on Apple Music, even if you just select hopefully 5 stars. You don't have to even write a review if you don't want, but I would love if you did. But you can even just rate it. And post this on your story and tag me so I can repost, retweet, all of that. And I will talk to you guys next week. Love you guys so much, and I will see you then. Bye, everyone.